Welcome everybody, a special welcome to Shanaaz. For those of you who listen to this podcast later, last week Shanaaz has spoken to us about asking for help, and it is so interesting. And by the way, what is this event all about? Well, it is my life, my business. Wish I was here. I was nearly not here, but I want to invite you into our discussion today and maybe some thought-provoking things. And just because of what Shanaaz shared on asking for help, it made me think a little bit about, in essence, Shanaaz spoke about why we struggle. What's the reasons for struggling to ask for help? And it begged the question. So when we just ask questions in general, do we know what to ask? So I thought a little bit about questioning skills. So I looked around and I found a book with the title, and it was really about the title and not so much about the content. But the book is titled "Doesn't Hurt to Ask," which is actually quite interesting, by an author called Trey Gowdy. And Trey Gowdy is, for some of you, you might know who Trey Gowdy is, but he is a United States lawyer and politician. Now, I must say, full declaration is that I'm not always sure I agree with Trey Gowdy's thoughts and so on, especially politically. But in the pursuit of being open to different views and so on, I decided I'm going to share the contents of his book in any case, and hopefully, Shanaaz, especially if what I share just triggers in whatever possible way, please make a note and we'll discuss it afterwards. Some of it is a little controversial, but you know what? It's this is what it requires to stay open to alternative views. Now, the book really centers on using the power of questions to communicate, connect, and persuade. And I thought, how contentious can this be? And so, interestingly enough, Trey Gowdy speaks about using the power of questions to persuade. Now, he says persuasion is a subtle art, and questions are its greatest tools. He launches just the introduction in terms of this way, is: do you want to win every argument you ever want to have? And if so, persuasion is about listening, communicating, and advocating for your own beliefs in a compelling way. Now, questions work very well because they put the focus on your conversation partner. Now, throughout the book, he speaks about an opponent and he uses legal terms. So obviously, he draws a lot from the two main areas of his life, which is courtroom experience as well as being in a House of Representatives at one stage, so very much political arena and so on. So bear that in mind when you hear me share. But just to come back to the fact that he says questions work well because they put the focus on your conversation partner and nudges them in the right direction without making them react defensively. And then he's the first statement that kind of tests my own paradigm. He says, stupid questions do exist. And so I go, all right, I need to find out what he means by this. But by way of an example, it is, for example, being in a restaurant or a coffee shop and asking the waiter to bring you a black coffee. The waiter, being on autopilot, asks if you want hot or cold milk. Now, Trey regards that as a stupid question. But he still maintains, but a stupid question is better than a stupid assertion, because a stupid question might just reveal your knowledge gap. And he says it's better to be uninformed rather than to be misinformed. In his book, there's a quote that says, "The art of persuasion is not about winning people over, but bringing people closer together. So we're going to explore some of these things in a little bit more detail. He says, when you're wanting to persuade anyone, right, to your way of thinking, you present them with an argument. But he says, know your objective, your facts, and your jury. And this term, jury, would reflect anybody that you're speaking to, your conversation partner, that is, which could be colleague, friends, family, or it could be, in legal terms, a real jury. But here, jury represents everybody that you regard as a conversation partner and you want to persuade them. And so to use questions to make a point, he says, have an objective. And I want to add that you need to have sort of a smart objective. Shanaaz introduced us to asking smartly last week in terms of being specific, making sure that what you're asking is measurable, it must be achievable, and in many cases reasonable, resourced, all these kinds of things, and T being time frame. So when you think about what it is you want to achieve, make sure it's specific and that you can measure it, because then it helps you stay focused. The second point there is base your argument on facts, not conjecture, and not dreams, visions, fantasies, but facts. So basically, in this case, what do we mean by that is, well, gather evidence to support your point, whatever that evidence is. And then the third part is get to know your jury, who could be an investor, a partner, whether it's a business partner or a romantic partner, a friend or a co-worker. And once you actually go down this path by getting to know who your conversation partner is, it kind of shapes, or it informs you on how to present your argument. And the questions that you will use would be to gain a better understanding of who you're talking to. So you'll ask questions in terms of what your conversation partner believes and why they believe it. And it's very important that when you're framing these questions, you're focusing on them in a way that stays curious and not judgmental whatsoever. And questions will help you gauge whether the jury or conversation partner in this regard is open to being persuaded at all. Here's a key question for you in terms of this, is asking, are you open to hearing about this? And this, if the answer is no, well, it's going to save you a lot of time and effort. And if there are, you can continue. Then, once you've established what it is you're wanting to achieve, and you've done your research, and you understand who your conversation partner is, you got to realize that there are different types of questions that will work in different situations. So I'll focus on some of these from Trey's perspective, and if we have time, I will share some more types of questions for you, to you. And so key would be, is the starting point would be what he calls softball or non-leading questions. And they include words like who, what, when. So for example, I could ask Shanaaz, so what inspired you to pursue a career in social work, for instance, for interest sake? And then when you ask this question, you stay interested in what the other person has to say. You got to employ active listening skills. And when you ask these non-leading questions, it helps you establish a basis for your argument in very much a neutral way, right? Because for example, if you want to hold a conversation with someone about household duties, especially if you think they're not carrying out their household duties, you could start with, okay, when did you last take the trash out, for instance, and wait for an answer, etc. And they will answer in a way that you can then further engage. If they say, well, I took the trash out yesterday. That will help you then make a case for, well, actually we should take the trash out on a daily basis and so on. Then you have another type of questions, which he calls hardball or leading questions, which will either help to confirm your point or slow down and contradict your opponent's point. Yeah, now you're getting tough and dirty with these types of questions. However, just here's the key, is that they put the focus on the question itself rather than the answer. So in light of the example around household duties, if you continue that conversation and you change it into a hardball question, is you ask the question this way: didn't I tell you to take out the trash this morning? And the question implies that the answer should be yes. So now you see, when we're watching courtroom drama or people operating and making a point in the political arena, these are some of the things that they use as tools. In any case, there's another type. The last type of question category is the why question. And the why question changes everything. And what that speaks to, it attempts to understand the intention behind the actions, right? Rather than just judging actions and therefore concluding, you ask why types of questions. Now, he uses a courtroom example for this when he asks the accused, why did you assault your partner? If the answer is they were abusing the kids, you could kind of begin to understand what drove the person to that and how serious that motive was behind the behavior. But what if they turned around and just says, well, I assaulted my partner because they were snoring? The difference is quite significant. So what case would you then be making if you have to talk to a person such as this? In order for you to be convincing, you've got to be sincere. And I mean, these are like sort of very, you would think, well, obvious, right? But in order for you to come across as sincere, there's a few things you need to avoid. And I don't know if we unconsciously sometimes move into these mold where we tend to think that to shift somebody's position, we should do one of these three things, and they are: firstly, we must avoid insulting the other person, because all it does is just makes the other party defensive and aggressive, and you come across as petty and insecure. Also, avoid being hypocritical. Don't hold your opponent or your conversation partner to a different standard than your own. And then the big one: avoid lying. And what he means by this is that don't intentionally twist the facts to mislead the other person. And we spoke about this in the last 2 weeks. We spoke about trust. So you will lose the trust of the other person, and you can say goodbye to your argument. You will never persuade that person if you insult them, if you're hypocritical, and if you're lying to them. And so these are the things. So all you'll end up being is just insincere. But the key to be convincing and sincere is to be genuinely passionate about what you're believing in. You show that you really care about something. And sometimes you would say, but it's in the mundane, we're trying to persuade somebody to change their behavior. So what if you were trying to get someone to show up on time, for instance? Then you find a bigger principle to be passionate about. And so you talk about the essence of mutual respect, meaning that if somebody is habitually late, then they only have a healthy respect for their own time rather than a respect for somebody else's time. They actually, by their behavior, is communicating that time to them and how they spend their time is far more important than anybody else's time. So if you're passionate about mutual respect, you make it about mutual respect to convey the necessity of becoming more punctual. Now he uses this term thrown about very, very much in the political arena, legal. I don't know if this is really. I think they used it, especially in the Western Cape as well, is impeachment. Impeaching an argument by questioning someone's facts, logical character. So this is where the book, becomes a little contentious. So I'm very interested to know what you think about this. So in any case, what is impeachment? Well, what he means by this in the context of the topic is killing the credibility of someone's argument. And there are several ways that he talks about. The first one is dispute the facts that they are basing their argument on. And how do you dispute the facts? Well, what you got to establish, and it's I can see it's very much in this sort of a legal approach, is it hearsay? Is it third hand? Did this somebody gather the knowledge from somebody else? And then it's easier to dispute the facts. So somebody said, okay, is that other person that says this, where did they get their facts from? And so on and so on and so on, in terms of trying to persuade someone to your point of view. Secondly, dispute the logic when the facts are correct. Meaning, what inferences, assumptions, conclusions are the person drawing from the facts? So does the conclusion therefore make sense? And generalizability, and I know Shanaaz, who does a lot of research and mentors and supervises a lot of research, is anything truly generalizable? And what are the basis for this? Sometimes, we talk about the facts are correct, but the facts only pertain to exceptions. But we generalize it over the population, and we just kind of go, well, that if it's true for a few people, then it follows that it will be true for all. And this is the kind of thing that you can question in the other person holding an opposing point of view. Now, this one is impeaching character. And it's interesting, the technique that's being used to impeach character is to use the hitchhiking method. It is by bringing into doubt the third party that that they connected with in terms of information sharing, in terms of that third party's known character and all of that. And so by insinuation, you impeaching the character of the person that you're having a conversation with. So this is very much, in the way I think about it, is very much something that if you're really in a debate, is probably not something that you want to do, because then you become subjective in your comments. But I suppose this, in a legal argument, is focusing on the perpetrator of a crime and so forth. Anyway, I did say some of this is going to be contentious. So we're still talking about being convincing, right? So here you are being sincere, you're having strong belief in something, in a higher principle. And in this manner, when you questioning or impeaching, you wanting to make sure that you kind of shoot Swiss cheese into somebody's position that they're holding, and that supposes sort of your alternative view is more acceptable, but you need some real skill in terms of that. So as far as being convincing is concerned, is that you fine-tune your persuasion skills by measuring, repeating, and repackaging. And so just simply what does he mean by this? Is measuring is keep your questions worded simply and precisely. Avoid using words like, yeah, but everybody says this. And this always happens in this way. or it never happens like that. These grand, sweeping, big generalizations, is avoid those when you simply asking questions. And remember, we are still talking about asking questions to engage with somebody, to be naturally curious about the position that person holds, and to gain that information and to receive the feedback that is so necessary for you to understand that person better. Use repetition to drive your question home. Now, if in our example, the person that is always late, never on time for any meetings, whether it's professional, whether it's social, repetition just means that you ask a different version of the same question. So if you want to make a point with this particular person, depending on whether they have an internal locus of control or an external one, is you could ask the question in this way: what caused your decision to be late? Or how did you arrive at your decision to be late? In both cases, you emphasizing one thing, that this person is making a decision and is not at the effects of external events. So they're not victim to anything. They are making a choice to be late. Then the repackaging your decision is interesting, is that you got to kind of reduce the opponent's argument to absurdity by putting it in different words. So he uses a courtroom example. So when a defense attorney suggests that a woman should have known better than to go back to her abusive partner, you repackage this by saying, so you saying it is her fault that she was abused. And when I think about this repackaging, in a way, it is it's really a technique that shifts somebody's argument that they're making and saying, well, this is the implication of what you are saying. Is this what you are saying? And maybe that creates the opportunity for dialogue, right? For back and forward, and hopefully it is constructive dialogue. Now you got to make provision for, if your argument is failing, what do you do then? That's interesting. If your argument is failing, he says, divert, deconstruct, double down, or play the victim. He says, cover your losses. Create a diversion, he says. Interrupt them with some more clever questions. Because, when somebody's on a roll, you're basically breaking their momentum. Deconstruction means if they're making find any sort of tiny assumption that they're making by asking, but how do you know this? How can you be sure of this? Challenge, or double down. And these things are not the things I would be teaching anybody, but keep on flogging a dead horse until you can exit the argument. It's an interesting technique. And then he says, lastly, if nothing works and you're going to lose, is play the victim card as the last resort. And so what does he mean by playing reading through all of this, I was like, oh, no. But what he means by this is that a question typically like this is, how do you think it makes me feel when you misrepresent my faith and my spiritual beliefs? So anyway, just to recap, so if the argument is failing, right, then you'll divert, you'll deconstruct, you'll double down, or you'll play the victim. So, to master the art of persuasion, set the right expectations and stay open. Persuasion isn't about winning, it's about successful communication. So set the right expectations. Don't aim to force your listeners to agree with everything you say. Rather, guide them to draw their own conclusions based on the merits of your argument. And remember how you formulate your argument, right? How you shape your argument is through this questioning, asking powerful questions. When you are trying to persuade others, here's the kicker. And then this restores my faith in Trey Gowdy. He says, when you are trying to persuade others, you need to be persuadable yourself. This means staying receptive to new facts and perspectives and adjusting your beliefs when you are confronted with contradictory evidence yourself. You know, how willing are you to keep an open mind? And for me, that is part of being sincere. Being sincere about persuading others, but looking out for opportunities where you can be persuaded yourself that maybe your point of departure, maybe your facts are not as rock solidly accurate as what you thought. But be open to learn, right? Open to hear somebody out. So after all, you can't expect others to change their minds after a good argument if you're not willing to do the same. So, in summary, questions are a great way to present facts without stating them outright. Weave your best fact into one of the first questions you use in order for you. So you can use it as sort of a launching pad, right? But just remember, set the right expectations and stay open. And I want to end off with just a few, it's a long list, I'll only share a few. A list of empowering questions is, what can you do about that? What about that makes it work? What other choices can you make? What's another way to look at that? How can you reframe that to help you move on? What's your next step? Please remind me of how you were able to do that. What did you learn from that? What will you do the next time? What works well? What's really bothering you about this? What do you think the main challenge is? And I'll stop right there because we nearly run out of time. So, Shanaaz, what do you think?
I thought that was really interesting. I'm going to listen to it again because I've got to convince some second years of a few things that are controversial. So I will use some of those tactics. But I what I can say is that I'm thinking of this particular class now that I'm busy with, and the one actually said to me, so I've got to bring in a lot of history of South Africa, and a lot of the questions is like, but why has this got to do with youth and community development now? And I will kind of talk about historical events and set the scene and the context. And one of the young people asked me that, and then I actually asked the others, can anyone answer him, right? And that, I think, was convincing for the young person, that actually someone in the class knew where I was going to with the topic. Then what was really nice, and it's not about I was going to say it works, is passion and enthusiasm. One of
Yes.
the young people came up to me, the students came up to me, and he asked me, Dr. Hussein, why are you so passionate about this? I can see, I can see it. And then I could actually tell me, and I was like, I was actually glad about that, because I think that it communicates my genuineness and how I really feel about the topics, and I think that is key sometimes to your persuasion, which I think he says is around the passion,
Yes.
and the genuineness. I think another thing that I really like, and agreeing with you, is the fact that I'm also aware that there may be different points of views in class. And I think that I am very open when I do say some of these controversial things that sometimes we don't want to talk about in society. Then I am very open that there may be a different experience, and I am then willing to learn from that student about their particular experience if they're willing to share it. And I think that kind of that has helped me. And I think I see where he's going, and agreeing that maybe I don't agree with all of his comments and principles like you, but there are some that I can see really works. So
Yeah.
that's me. I thought that was really nice. Yeah, food for thought.
It's definitely food for thought. But anyway, anybody listening to this, all we're saying is it means you're being deliberate, you're being focused on the outcome of the conversation, and it is about persuading people through using questions. And I mean, your example where in a classroom situation, or you asked the question, but you posed it to the rest of the class, which conveyed its own message and persuaded your student that was really challenging the topic or the focus or those kinds of things. And yeah, empowering questions, especially when they open type questions that focus on clarity seeking and probing and thought provoking, even to the extent where they are future directed, is to really think it through, which means you're not always flying by the seat of your pants when you're preparing to persuade anybody, or at least you're getting somebody to agree that even though the topic might be controversial or it's really difficult to grasp some of these things from a paradigm point of view, it's at least to be open to willing to explore. And I think, if that is like the focus, the outcome that you want, and I think then you have achieved it. But the key would be, rather than just presenting the facts help you to shape the kinds of questions you want to ask. And that's really what today is all about. Ask powerful questions. And yeah, so until next week, and thank you, Shanaaz, thank you, Julia, for being with us and always in the background doing our trusty admin and tweeting as we're going along, is learn. Take something about what we say. You don't have to believe in everything we share about, but at least be willing to kind of go, oh, I need to go and learn a little bit more. I need to go and do my own research. I want to go and read a book that actually counters everything played out. Even if we do that, then we've achieved our objective to bring you to that place of greater awareness and therefore greater engagement with your life, whether it's in career, business, or whether it's in society in general. So thank you very much, everyone. I just also want to remind you that next week will be a public holiday, and so we will be skipping next week, and we'll be meeting in 2 weeks' time.
Thank you everyone. Thank you, Jacques. Bye.
All right, Shanaaz. Bye.